揽投资国内专业的互联网理财平台，收益超银行活期数倍，已为众多用户带来丰厚收益。揽投资理财新选择，
源于民族之心，兴于品质之巅，成于健康之路。有爱有缘有三元。
财新时间由三元乳业联合冠名播出。拥有100余年历史的著名政经杂志《经济学人》今年迎来了他的新掌门人詹妮·贝多斯。作为这本刊物的第17任总编辑，现年47岁的贝多斯与他的诸位前辈相比，开了一个先河。她是《经济学人》有史以来的首任女性总编辑。贝多斯呢，拥有牛津大学的学士学位和哈佛大学的硕士学位。早年在国际货币基金组织担任经济学家，还曾担任波兰财政部长的顾问。1994年的时候，他加入《经济学人》杂志，担任商业版、经济版编辑，主要负责商业、金融和科技的报道。2015年年初，凭借出众的业务和领导能力，他从3位候选人中脱颖而出，当选《经济学人》总编辑。经济学人集团董事会主席鲁伯特雷亚盛赞他是一位优秀的领导者。在文章编辑方面具有丰富的经验，他将成为《经济学人》及其价值观的真正倡导者。不久前，他访问中国，并接受了《财新时间》的专访。
I think you are the first female editor-in-chief in the 170 years of economy.
173. We're about to have our anniversary.
So now people, I think it's a very hot topic about women's unique contribution to the organizations they are working with and working in. And talking about, women's participation rate, for example, in Silicon Valley tech companies, in government. Just 1 month ago, I just placed an interview with the Chief Minister of Scotland, Mrs. Sturgeon. So so people talking about the women's increasing role and the unique contribution to the organization they are with. So, what can you bring to economists?
Well, you have a female editor-in-chief, and rightly so, and excellently so. I am. I'm struck and have been struck by how much attention has been paid to the fact that I'm a woman and the first woman editor. And I must say that for me, that is a sign of how much further we have to go. I will be delighted when the fact that I'm a woman is no longer a topic of conversation, because that will be a sign that we are no longer at the stage where there are relatively few women. And so the sooner that happens, the better. But I think there are many articles have been written about whether women manage differently to men and so forth. I'm sure there is some truth to that, although I asked one of my correspondents to look into this, and he wrote a Schumpeter column saying it was a lot of nonsense. But I think there probably is something to that, but my bigger view is that diversity is good. I'm very keen. I think you get the best analysis when you have a diverse group of people. I don't believe in quotas I don't think one can impose it, but I think one should always look for the best possible journalists from as broad a background as possible, because that makes for better journalism. And I hope that that's what we do, and I hope that increasingly, as you have more representation from different groups of people in any business, frankly, I think that's a step forward. But I hope that in 20 years, when my successor and your successor are having this conversation, that their gender won't be an issue.
Okay.
有着173年历史的《经济学人》在今年8月刚经历了一次大规模的股权变更。 培生集团以4.69亿英镑出售《经济学人》50%股权，其中27.8%卖给《经济学人》集团股东之一意大利阿涅利家族旗下的投资机构 Axer， 余下由《经济学人》集团回购。贝多斯说，这次股权变更从一定程度上增加了《经济学人》的经济独立性。
So now from Pearson to Italian's Agnelli family, so we know this is owner of a Fiat. So I know you have put in a very solid firewall between the business side and the editorial, but how can you assure your readers and that you can still be remain independent?
The first is that we don't have a single owner. We have gone 1929, the Financial Times had 50% of The Economist, but it was a non-controlling 50%. So that means that on the board, this was under the old structure, there were 13 directors, 7 from the Financial Times, 6 from a group of independent, largely private families at that time. Pearson bought the Financial Times in the 1950s and again was until this year, had 50%, but it was a non-controlling ownership. Pearson has now sold that 50% stake to 2 groups. The first is Exor, as you say, which is the holding company of the Agnelli family. They will own 43% of the Economist Group. That makes them the biggest single shareholder, but very much a minority shareholder. So they have less than Pearson used to. The rest of the Pearson shares were bought back by The Economist. The Economist Group did a buyback, or is doing a buyback to buy them back. The result of that is that our commercially ownership is more diffuse in that the biggest shareholder has 43%. So we've commercially become even more independent.
We know that you just launched your called the global review. It's called the Economist Business Review. So featuring both English and the Chinese application. So what made this happen? So why would you want to launch this product now?
Well, Global Business Review, as you say, is a new app that we've launched. It's very cool because it is both in Chinese and English. You can flip between the two on the app. And it offers a selection of our business, finance, science, technology content. And the reason we did it is that clearly we see huge potential in the Chinese market, like everybody else. But we felt that there were many potential readers for whom reading The Economist every week was perhaps too much to start with. So this is kind of a taster of what The Economist can be. It's a selection of articles, and you can read them in English, or you can flip and read them in Chinese. And so the idea was to broaden the reach, to reach more people in China with this product. And I hope, of course, that it's a gateway drug, that once you get addicted to that, you will want to have the full Economist product.
Okay, why now?
Why now? Because 2 reasons. One, the state of the technology is such that we are innovating like everybody else. It's a mobile-only product. You can only get it on mobile app. 5 years ago, that would not have been possible. So the technology allows us to do it, and we are hoping to do this in other parts of the world with other languages, but we started here because clearly this is an extremely important potential market.
经济学人2012年开设中国专栏，这是继1942年开设美国专栏以来第2次为单独一个国家开设专栏。有关中国的相关报道也经常登上《经济学人》的封面。近期，他还在上海发布了首份针对中国的商业报告《中国经济2015》。贝多斯说，他最感兴趣的中国故事还是经济问题，比如宏观经济、改革手段、增长引擎等等。
Okay, well, talk about China. I think you have run fantastic stories about China's reform, and what's interesting most when it comes to China-related reporting? Which sectors and which areas you?
You know, the Chinese economy and where the Chinese economy is going is surely, I would say, the single biggest question hanging over the world economy. Every single person in the world economy interested in global business or economics has to understand or has to try and understand what is happening in this country. And so that's the background against which I try and see where our reporting is going. And then the question is, so what is happening? And it's partly an analysis of what's happening macroeconomically. You know, is the Chinese economy slowing? By how much? How is the reform process progressing? because it's an extraordinarily interesting economy. You're in the process of trying to change the drivers of the economy very fundamentally. You do it against the backdrop of huge opportunities, but some considerable challenges. And so and it's an economy that's very poorly understood. It's very difficult to understand well, I think. And so it's one where what I hope we try to do, which is to analyze the facts, to offer objective analysis, an independent view, really can add value. So I try to, and I have fantastic correspondents here, a very, very strong team. We try to understand what's going on, to analyze it, and to offer a view so that people outside China have an understanding of what's happening. And I hope people inside China would find that analysis interesting too. And in terms of sectors, you know, I think it's not an exaggeration to say that people find anything about China's economy interesting, because it's important. It's so big. The scale of this transformation, the scale of the economy is such. And frankly, the gap between the importance of the Chinese economy and most people's understanding of it is so big that there is a huge potential for you too, for good reporting about the Chinese economy.
But, you know, maybe short of personnel, the budget, I don't know the budget allocation for China-related reporting. But I think you talk about you want to do everything, you want to explore each, you know, sectors. But how can you? Well,
obviously you're right. I don't have the capacity to have a reporter assigned to every sector of the Chinese economy. Our overall team is small, and our team within China is quite small. But what we do is not the reporting of the sort that documents every small change. What we do is to stand back and say, these are the big trends, these are the areas we need to focus on. And so, for instance, as you know, we've written obviously a lot this summer about the financial market, about the currency. I think understanding at a big picture macro level what is happening is one very important part. Explaining what's happening there. We have a big piece coming out about Chinese business, which was my Chinese business editor, but he's worked on it for many, many weeks. It's a very in-depth piece. So we do some pieces very in-depth, and we assign a reporter for a long time. Some are at the more bigger picture level, and then I hope that many of my subject specialists look at whether it's the Chinese tech sector, or whether it's Chinese media, or whether it's any particular sector in the context of the rest of the global industry. And I think that's another area where we can add value. We can put events in China, developments in the Chinese market into the broader global context.
What's the most difficult part when it comes to China-related reporting? So bureaucracy, or it's hard to access to?
I think if you ask my colleagues who are based here in Beijing or in Shanghai, I think that is a challenge. I think understanding the transparency is not always as good as it could be in terms of both data, getting access to data. You can only do really rigorous reporting if you have facts, and if you can find facts, and if you can find the information on which to base your analysis. Our analysis is only as good as the information that we can get to base it on. And so that, I think, can be a challenge.
总部设在英国伦敦的《经济学人》杂志一向把自己的视角定位于全球，欧洲的难民危机、中美关系、巴黎气候大会，这些话题也都在贝多斯的视野之中。贝多斯认为，难民危机是欧洲数十年以来所面临的最大问题，将对欧洲的未来产生影响。而中美之间在一些领域存在零和关系，但在更多的方面可以实现双赢。关键在于双方看到并接纳对方的领导力，这将影响未来的世界格局。而对于年底在巴黎举行的联合国气候大会，贝多斯认为，会议能否取得成果，还要看各碳排放大国的政治意愿。
I think you criticize the coalition government attitude toward the refugee issue, and I think it's created kind of chaos and confusions among the leaders.
In Europe, no, I absolutely agree. I think this is the biggest challenge facing Europe in decades, and I think that Angela Merkel is absolutely right when she puts it in those circumstances. I think it will have a bigger impact in shaping the future of Europe, quite possibly, than the euro crisis, because this what is at the heart of this? The heart is Europe's values. You know, the European Union was set up in some sense to epitomize the European values that include support for and help for refugees. And the reason that Germany has behaved in the way it has, I think, is very largely historically determined, that they have a very strong sense of that. It's also, however, not just about Europe's moral attitude towards refugees, it's also about Europe's attitude to migrants at a time when Europe both has politically an increasing concern about immigration, but frankly economically demographically needs younger workers. You know, Germany is a country whose working population is declining and aging fast. So it brings together very many difficult things for the Europeans. I think thus far, and you're right, you described a cover we had called Europe's Boat People in April, where we were very critical of the response. We called it it's a moral question, but one that the Europeans have been unable to deal with very well. And now it's come to a head again. And I think how Europe deals with this will define whether we can be proud to be Europeans, but it will also define how Europe sets itself up for the future. Will it try to put up barriers and stop things, or will it welcome people and integrate them? It's a very, very big question.
But I think, yes, this is, I think, one side of the coin. The other side is that I think a root cause lies in the chaotic Middle East and the actual anarchic situation.
That's a very fair point. There are several root causes. The movement of migrants to Europe are several different kinds of migrants with several different causes. And I think if we put them together, there are broadly three. The first is that the simple economic gap between the standard of living in Africa and the standard of living in Europe has always been huge, is huge, but now it is increasingly possible for people to move. Globalization, the reduction in the cost of transport and so forth means that people can move for economic reasons in a way that 30 years ago, if you were in a very poor village in Mali, it was not conceivable to get to Europe. And now it is. So that's one change. That's then been exacerbated by the political upheaval in many countries, and I haven't even got to Syria yet, but many countries in Africa and around, where the pressure to move or to move away from home has grown. Mm-hmm. And then the third part, as you say, is the tragedy in Syria and the collapsing of states around there, the phenomenon of the Islamic State, all of those very acute. And so Syria is the most acute, but there is a broader group of countries from which people are coming. In Syria, you're right that it is, I don't think the Western reaction to the Syrian events has been one that we can be very proud of. It's not simple to know what to do, and it's many people say, well, the only answer to the refugee crisis is to go and sort out Syria. Well, sort out Syria is very, very hard. It's not the outside policy has not been terribly good, but it is not going to be an easy one to sort out. And I think that that's an important part of this, the consequence of this crisis will be needing to focus again on trying. But I am not, I don't think it's as simple to say you can just go in and sort it out.
In the short and medium term, people say this is, we cannot find the perfect solution for this problem.
There's no, and I think it will be a challenge that has to be looked at on many fronts. More needs to be done to try and help end bloodshed, help boost the economies in those countries. I mean, I think one of the, it will be essential to find ways to enable faster economic growth, faster reform in a lot of Arab and Middle Eastern countries. There's a huge, they are very young populations, hugely growing populations, and terrible economies. And that's a very, very big challenge. And unless those economies grow, the pressure for people to move elsewhere is going to grow dramatically. But I think we shouldn't be naive. There are going to be many people who see a better life in Europe. And at the same time, Europe needs people. If you look on a 20, 30-year horizon, the sustainability of Europe's welfare state, the sustainability of Europe's standard of living will depend on having more workers. But we also need to be conscious that the pace at which people assimilate is not infinite. You cannot expect countries to absorb limitless amounts of people without thinking through how that can be done. And for me, there are two drivers. The first and clear one, the lesson of previous migrations of large people is people integrate best if they work. You need to have people in the workforce first. And the second is I think we can learn from previous big migrations. And if you look at how the United States absorbed huge numbers of people, it's possible to do, but you need to have people integrated, assimilated, and working.
Yeah. First of all, you provide work for them. I think
You absolutely have to. And you have to let them work.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the kind of ironies of the European system is when people are applying for asylum, so the refugees, a process that can take a long time, they're not allowed to work. So you prevent the integration from happening.
If you look at the whole picture, so you can see all the flash points, not just few bright spots. So cyber attack, territories in South China Sea, and a lot of Chinese domestic, concerns. So
I think broadly there are some misperceptions on both sides of this. There is a tendency on both sides actually to view the Sino-American relationship as a zero-sum relationship. That one's up, one's down, one's doing better, the other one isn't. And in some areas, I'm sure that's true. But broadly, there are many, many, many win-win areas. And managing that relationship in a way that both sides see their respective role and importance in terms of, frankly, global leadership, for me, that is whether that can be done is a very important determinant of what the world economy will look like over the coming years. Traditionally, we haven't been very good at it. You look back and you see rising powers and dominant powers, the relationship hasn't always been so great. I think it's managing thus far, it's been actually remarkably well managed, and I think that is the challenge going forward, and it requires a sense of responsibility on both sides.
Okay, maybe final question about what's your projection about the year-end Paris and climate change summit?
Actually, that's an area where you see something extremely positive happened between China and the US. Right? That is an area where neither side had been doing had been saying, well, it's not our problem, you created it, and the US had been the sort of really not focused on it either. And then suddenly, actually, both sides are being much more responsible. So I think that is an area where, if we have serious progress, it will be because there has been progress between China and the US. And on a bilateral level, there seems to be some recognition of that, and both sides have separately been actually acting. And President Obama has essentially given up on Congress and used executive action as a route forward on that. And I think it's not, I'm sure the action is not as bold as many climate change activists would want, but it's a huge step forward.
Okay, but are you optimistic about we can reach a legally binding deal after,
Well, people are more optimistic about Paris than they have been at previous of these UN conferences.
Not a repeat of Copenhagen.
Well, no one wants a repeat of Copenhagen. I actually think that having targets and so forth is extremely important, but what really matters is a willingness within the main CO2 emitting countries to act. And I'm beginning to see that willingness in the countries that matters most. And so are we going to do enough fast enough? Not clear yet. But as countries, perhaps you wouldn't be surprised given where I work and that I've been with the economists for a long time, but I'm a great believer in markets, and I'm a great believer in that people, as countries grow wealthier, as per capita income rises, people become more focused on concerns like environmental concerns, and you see that very much here. And so I am also very much a believer in man's capacity to innovate and to find solutions to problems. And so I think we are recognizing the magnitude of the situation, and action is being taken. I'm not yet confident whether it will be enough quick enough.